So two-step conversions, well, two or more steps really is what this should be. It's not always going to be two, it's going to be two or more. Essentially, obviously in real life, we're not going to know directly the conversion factor of everything. Again, in real life, if you have a phone handy or computer or something, it's very easy to look up any conversion you need. But it's not great to always be reliant on technology without understanding it. And even just the idea of forcing ourselves to think about, going from centimeters to feet, should the number be getting bigger or smaller, that kind of thing is an important exercise to go through. And it's practice using proportions. It shows us how powerful proportions are, so it's a good exercise to go through that way. But on our conversion sheet, if you look through it, there is no centimeters to feet conversion factor on that sheet. So what you have to do is either working forwards or possibly kind of working backwards, or maybe a little bit of both, is you have to come up with a map of how we're going to get. So we're going to write this out first. So we're going to start with centimeters, leave a blank space, and we're going to end up at feet. And we're going to develop a plan of how we get there. Now, it's pretty simple, I'd say, to start off. So I want you to take a look at your conversions sheet and see if you can figure out what the plan would be. You think you know it already? Oh, you need one of these.
Thank you.
All right, what do you think?
First you go from centimeters to meters, and then after you go to meters to feet.
So you should kind of know that you can go from centimeters to meters, right? That's something that we should be aware of. And then if I look down here, centimeters to feet is metric to imperial. Eventually, you're going to be using the metric to imperial conversions. So if I look at here, I've got meters to feet. I've also got meters to yards, kilometers to miles, but that's not going to be very helpful. Meters to yards is going to make it more complicated. I can go from meters directly to feet. So when I start at centimeters, I can go to meters and then to feet. And that's essentially how this process works. We start by developing our map. And then we have to do two proportions to actually solve it. So what do you remember from yesterday? That's important. So I'm going to go, how many meters are in 50 centimeters? Okay, so I'm going to start with that. And from yesterday, what's the important thinking that has to happen here to finish off this proportion? Josh, what do you think? How do I get the rest of it?
You look at your conversion sheet
Yeah.
and figure out what you need to find, like feet and centimeters with the meter.
Yeah. Well, we're not going straight to feet, right? We have to go to meters first. So what is the conversion factor? Do you know? Can you find it on the sheet?
100 centimeters equals 1 meter.
100 centimeters is 1 meter. So how do I write that? How do I know how to write it? Adam? And why did you pick that? So they line up. So the units are the same. Is that what you mean? Yeah, we have to think about units. So I'm going to write that out on the side. This is how many meters is 50 centimeters. So I think I've got this upside down because 1 meter, I need meters on top and centimeters on the bottom here as well, right? So I'm going to flip this around. 1 meter is 100 centimeters. But the trick here is units. If you don't think about what units on top and what units on bottom, you've probably missed an important step. Okay? And so now how do I do this? Let me remove those now. I'm going to multiply both sides by 50. And so those divide to 1, x equals 50 divided by 100. 0.5. 50 centimeters is 0.5 meters. Does that make sense? Yeah, half a meter. You probably know that. But again, you should be thinking about it, right? Because sometimes if you get it flipped upside down like we had it first, you'd end up with 5,000. 50 centimeters is 5,000 meters. That is not right.
So do you always have to show this, or can you just do like 50 divided by?
If the question, like the learning goal says, use proportions, then you got to do it like this. So we're practicing this week and over these 3 days is how to use proportions. When we revisit this, we're going to talk about surface area and volume, and sometimes you'll have to convert. If you can do it quickly, you'd probably be allowed to do that, get away with it. But my warning yesterday was, even if you're really good at this, usually people make at least one mistake at some point where they divide when they're supposed to multiply or vice versa. And when you use a proportion, you'll never make that mistake. That's all. Okay, so this is now meters. We've gone centimeters to meters. So now I have to go from meters to feet. So how many feet is 0.5 meters? What's the conversion factor? Ethan? So here it is right here. 0.3048 meters equals 1 foot. And you said put 1 on top. Why did you pick 1 on top? So x is feet. How many feet is 0.5 meters? If 1 foot is 0.3048. Very good. Again, got to think about the units. Multiply both sides by 0.5. And what does that work out to? 0.5 divided by 0.3048 is 1.64 rounded feet. 50 centimeters is about 1.5 feet. Does that make sense? This is the other nice thing about this, is it forces, we talked about this a bit yesterday, but it forces you to think about relationships between units. That does make sense. A ruler, if you look at it, has 12 inches and has 30 centimeters. So if 30 centimeters is about 1 foot, it's not exactly, but it's about 1 foot. Then a little bit more is going to be like a little bit over 1.5 feet. So, I mean, it works out really nicely. All right, so what I want you to do for this one, pounds to grams, is come up with your map first. See if you can figure out the steps that would be required to go from pounds to grams. Do that first. Vincent, do you know what the map would be here? Like what the pathway would be? What do you think? How I go from pounds to grams. Summer, what do you think? So pounds to kilograms, if I go back to my conversion sheet, again, you can see right here is I can convert between pounds and kilograms. And then hopefully we kind of know that you can go from kilograms to grams. Grams is the base unit. So again, I mean, people think this is really easy, but when you practice it just a little bit and become familiar with how the sheet works, it makes it a lot easier and a lot quicker to do these if you have to do a whole bunch of them, for example, in a shorter amount of time, right? So it really does, I think, pay off to practice. So we're going to go from pounds to kilograms. That's the imperial to metric conversion that we have, and then kilograms to grams. So try to set up the proportion. Think about the units. This is going to be step 1, and then this is going to be step 2. But again, our map could have more steps, but it's not very often. Usually you can get it in 2 steps. What's the first proportion? Ethan? Yeah, like the proportion, that first step, the whole thing. Okay, so we're going to get 11.01, but what's the part before that?
Okay, x over 5 equals 1 over
0.454. So this is, Summer, what's wrong? You want to flip it the other way around? So this is such a good question. Like, how do we know which one is which? How do we know which one's right if there's ever an uncertainty or people got different answers? What is the x? Our first step is we're going 2 kilograms. So this is in kilograms, and this is pounds, which you can see 5 pounds, so we know that. And when I look at the sheet, the 1 is pounds. So yeah, we're going to flip this. 0.454 over 1. Whoops. There. Multiply both by 5. And we get x equals 2.27. So 5 times 0.454. Nice. And that's not rounded. That's exact, which is good. Next step. So now this is kilograms. Again, you want to probably write down the units so you know where you're at. We want to go to grams. So again, ask that question. How many grams is 2.27 kilograms if 1,000 grams equals 1 kilogram? There's 1,000 grams equals 1 kilogram. Multiply by 2.27, multiply by 2.27. $2,270. 5 pounds is over 2,000 grams. Grams is a small weight, right? Like people weigh closer, not usually quite, but closer to like 100 kilograms. So a gram is not a lot. So that makes sense. 5 pounds would be a lot of grams. All right, let's try. Let's just do the map for C and D. So I want you to try to do that map for both of those. Okay, so what's the map for the first one? Tamara, you tell me. Okay, so I can go from millimeters to meters. Does everybody agree you can do that? Yeah. And then I can go from meters to feet. I can't go directly from meters to inches. We don't have that conversion rate. If you had that conversion rate, you could. But that's not really the point of this. The point of this is that thinking through it and just thinking about it and problem solving. So instead, we're going to go to feet, and then hopefully you know that you can go from feet to inches. Most of you know that 1 foot equals 12 inches. So you already kind of know that. Okay, very good. And the next one, Liam? To pints, and then, I can go pints straight to quarts. Good. Yep. So that one's only got one middle step. That one had two. Any questions? We won't bother going through those ones. I don't think we need to worry about that right now.